Um, so today I'm not going to talk to you about our IVF journey. I'm actually going to talk to you about something a little different. With everything that's going on, I've seen a lot of posts lately, and I had always wanted to share my story about our pregnancy loss, but I just really hadn't gotten the courage to do it because it's a very sensitive subject and people have a lot of hurtful opinions about it. And so I kind of just kept it to myself and my close friends. But with the passing of the New York state law, I decided that I would share my story a little bit to maybe shed some light on the situation and why it's important to understand where this law is coming from. I grew up in a very Christian conservative household, and in my late 20s, I was asked, what I thought about abortion, and I said, I myself would never have an abortion, but who am I to tell another woman what she can do with her body? That's for her to decide. That's not for me to make that decision. That is that woman's decision alone. Back in 2016, my husband and I had been married for 2 years, and we decided that we wanted to start trying to have a baby and start our family. And it didn't take very long, and we got pregnant in October of 2016. And right after we found out we were pregnant, we found out that we would be moving for a job opportunity for my husband. So we would be spending 3 months in Atlanta and 9 months in New York City. So there was just like a lot of change happening. So we did our 8-week appointment in Orlando. And this appointment still makes me mad to this day. I had gone into the doctor and they had done the ultrasound and they had seen the heartbeat, and the doctor said, I feel like there's extra fluid in the amniotic sac, so I'm gonna send you to our higher techs who can see better. They have better equipment, and they'll let you know. So hold on. So we went to the specialist the next day, and the doctors didn't tell the specialist what they were looking for, and so they were like, we don't see anything. We don't see anything wrong, and they sent me on my way. They didn't put me on high risk. They literally did nothing. So then I had my 14-week appointment in Atlanta with my doctor there, and I loved her. And they just did the heartbeat check and then a blood check just to see if there's any abnormalities. And everything was fine. Everything came back normal. We did the blood test for the gender reveal, and we found out that we were having a little boy, and we did that with my whole family in Atlanta. We were staying with my family in Atlanta, so that was really nice for us to be able to do that. About right after we found out we were having a little boy, we had our 18-week appointment. I think we found out at 17 weeks that we were having a boy, and at 18 weeks and 5 days was my next ultrasound appointment. And my husband came with me, and we went in we did the ultrasound, put the gel in the belly, and immediately the nurse got really quiet and wasn't really talking to us. And normally they're like happy and all that. But my husband is one that likes to ask a lot of questions. So, he's asking about everything. And then, he finally says, "Is it really a boy?" And she kind of snapped at him and she was like, "Yes, it's really a boy." And she walked out of the room. So at that moment, I kind of felt like something was a little off. And our doctor came in and said that my son's kidneys were a little larger than what they should have been, and they wanted to get me checked by yet another specialist as soon as possible. So they fit us in for the very next day. So we got to that appointment, and it was definitely more of a high-tech sonogram, ultrasound, and my husband, again, he liked to ask questions and was asking all these questions, and I pretty much right away saw that there was a huge chunk of the skull missing from my baby's head. And then after she had finished, I think it took about 30 minutes, the doctor finally came in and he said it wasn't good news, that my son's kidneys were 20 times the size that they should have been. And with that information, that all of his other organs were shut down. So none of his organs were working. Also, half of his skull was missing, and so his brain was leaking into the amniotic sac. He also had cysts on his organs and his kidneys. So the only thing that was actually working was his heart, because my umbilical cord was pumping blood into his three things: the kidneys 20 times the size that they should be, the skull missing, and the cysts on the organs. They said that is the trifecta of a genetic disorder called Meckel Gruber Syndrome. Meckel Gruber Syndrome is 100% fatal. My son would not live. Even if I carried to full term, he would die minutes after being born. But my doctor thought that he wouldn't make it in the womb much longer, but that if I miscarried, I could also die. If I carried to full term and something happened, I could also die. That if my son urinated within the amniotic sac, it would become septic and I would die. So the outlook was not good, and we weren't given any other choice but to have a emergency medical termination, is what they called it, because I was 18 weeks and 5 days, almost 19 weeks. And in Georgia, you can't have a termination past 20 weeks. So they gave me 2 clinics to call and sent me on my way. So I called 2 clinics and they said, well, we do late term abortions. It's a 2-day process. So we had to go in on the following Friday. So we had a week until the process was to be done. So my husband and I decided we would take like a 3-day trip to Orlando to see our friends. And I was supposed to be in Orlando anyway, celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Finding Nemo the Musical, the show that I work at, and I couldn't go, obviously. So we come back on Thursday, and on Friday we get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and head to the clinic because we're supposed to be there at 7 a.m. And we check in, and they moved us to what they call a family room. And that is a room for people like us who have to have an abortion for medical reasons. And it was a very long day. They did another ultrasound, a test. We had to talk to billing. They made us talk to a therapist. And that was on Friday. And the final thing I remember that they did was they took me into a room and they put what they called seaweed splints into my cervix. And I just remember that hurting so badly. It was it was incredibly painful. And this is to open up the cervix so that they can do what they need to do the following day. So then I went home and I just sat on a heating pad because I was in so much pain. And we turned around and we went back the next day. And my mom had wanted to come with me, and I wouldn't let her because I didn't think my mom would be able to handle the kind of ridicule that I knew was to come. Again, when we got there, they put us into the family room, but they do abortions on Saturday. And so while we were sitting there, we could hear the protesters outside, all men. And it was heartbreaking because I never wanted that to happen. And they took me back. And we had talked about saving our baby. We have his remains. And I remember telling the nurse that I wanted to make sure that I had them, that I was going to get them. But they had to send them to genetic testing, so I just wanted to make sure that I got to keep them. And they took me back without my husband. And I woke up in a room and I was just crying for my husband. And that was it. And I wasn't pregnant anymore. And I miss my baby every day. But I don't think that I would have been strong enough to have gone through a full-term pregnancy and watch him die in my arms. That's just something that some people can do, and I don't think I would have been able to do that. I think that this was the safest way for both me and my child. Nobody who is in this position wants to be in this position. It's the worst feeling you'll ever feel for a doctor to tell you that your child is not compatible with life. That the child that you wanted and hoped for will die either in the womb or in your arms. And so people need to understand that this law is not for women who just decided to have a late-term abortion. It's for women like me. That's my story. That's my pregnancy loss story. I know that I'm probably going to get a lot of backlash for sharing it, and that's okay. But you will never know the decisions and the heartache that goes along with it that you'll carry for the rest of your life until you are in that situation. But it was the safest way for me and for my baby. But it was definitely traumatic. And I miss him every day.